As Hermann completed this equivocal sentence, all eyes were turned upon the Baron. He became pale, then excessively red, then, dropping his pocket-handkerchief, stooped to recover it, when I caught a glimpse of his countenance, while it could be seen by no one else at the table. It was radiant with the quizzical expression which was its natural character, but which I had never seen it assume except when we were alone together, and when he unbent himself freely. In an instant afterward he stood erect, confronting Hermann, and so total an alteration of countenance in so short a period I certainly never saw before. For a moment I even fancied that I had misconceived him, and that he was in sober earnest. He appeared to be stifling with passion, and his face was cadaverously white. For a short time he remained silent, apparently striving to master his emotion. Having at length seemingly succeeded, he reached a decanter which stood near him, saying, as he held it firmly clenched, "The language you have thought proper to employ, Mynheer Hermann, in addressing yourself to me is objectionable in so many particulars that I have neither temper nor time for specification. That my opinions, however, are not the opinions to be expected of a gentleman is an observation so directly offensive as to allow me but one line of conduct. Some courtesy, nevertheless, is due to the presence of this company and to yourself at this moment as my guest. You will pardon me, therefore, if, upon this consideration, I deviate slightly from the general usage among gentlemen in similar cases of personal affront. You will forgive me for the moderate tax I shall make upon your imagination, and endeavor to consider for an instant the reflection of your person in yonder mirror as the living Mynheer Hermann himself. This being done, there will be no difficulty whatever. I shall discharge this decanter of wine at your image in yonder mirror, and thus fulfill all the spirit, if not the exact letter, of resentment for your insult, while the necessity of physical violence to your real person will be obviated." With these words he hurled the decanter full of wine against the mirror which hung directly opposite Hermann, striking the reflection of his person with great precision, and of course shattering the glass into fragments. The whole company at once started to their feet, and with the exception of myself and Ritzner, took their departure. As Hermann went out, the Baron whispered me that I should follow him and make an offer of my services. To this I agreed, not knowing precisely what to make of so ridiculous a piece of business. The duellist accepted my aid with his stiff and ultra-recherché air, and taking my arm led me to his apartment. I could hardly forbear laughing in his face, while he proceeded to discuss with the profoundest gravity what he termed the refinedly peculiar character of the insult he had received. After a tiresome harangue in his ordinary style, he took down from his bookshelves a number of musty volumes on the subject of the Duello, and entertained me for a long time with their contents, reading aloud and commenting earnestly as he read. I can just remember the titles of some of the works. There were the Ordonnance of Philip le Bel on Single Combat, the Theatre of Honor by Favin, and a treatise on the permission of duels by Endiguier. He displayed also with much pomposity Brantome's Memoirs of Duels, published at Cologne, 1666, in the types of Elzevir, a precious and unique vellum paper volume with a fine margin and bound by Derome. But he requested my attention particularly, and with an air of mysterious sagacity, to a thick octavo written in barbarous Latin by one Hedelin, a Frenchman, and having the quaint title Duelli lex scripta et non aliterque. From this he read me one of the drollest chapters in the world, concerning injuriae per applicationem per constructionem et per se, about half of which he averred was strictly applicable to his own refinedly peculiar case, although not one syllable of the whole matter could I understand for the life of me. Having finished the chapter, he closed the book, and demanded what I thought necessary to be done. I replied that I had entire confidence in his superior delicacy of feeling, and would abide by what he proposed. With this answer he seemed flattered, and sat down to write a note to the Baron. It ran thus: Sir, my friend M. P. will hand you this note. I find it incumbent upon me to request, at your earliest convenience, an explanation of this evening's occurrences at your chambers. In the event of your declining this request, Mr. P. will be happy to arrange with any friend whom you may appoint the steps preliminary to a meeting. With sentiments of perfect respect, your most humble servant, Johann Hermann. To the Baron Ritzner von Jung, August 18th, 18 Not knowing what better to do, I called upon Ritzner with this epistle. He bowed as I presented it, then, with a grave countenance, motioned me to a seat. Having perused the cartel, he wrote the following reply, which I carried to Hermann. Sir, through our common friend Mr. P., I have received your note of this evening. Upon due reflection, I frankly admit the propriety of the explanation you suggest. This being admitted, I still find great difficulty, owing to the refinedly peculiar nature of our disagreement and of the personal affront offered on my part, in so wording what I have to say by way of apology, as to meet all the minute exigencies and all the variable shadows of the case. I have great reliance, however, on the extreme delicacy of discrimination in matters appertaining to the rules of etiquette, for which you have been so long and so preeminently distinguished. With perfect certainty, therefore, of being comprehended, I beg leave, in lieu of offering any sentiments of my own, to refer you to the opinions of the Sieur Hedelin, as set forth in the 9th paragraph of the chapter of Injuriae per applicationem per constructionem et per se, in his Duelli lex scripta et non aliterque. The nicety of your discernment in all the matters here treated will be sufficient, I am assured, to convince you that the mere circumstance of me referring you to this admirable passage ought to satisfy your request as a man of honor for explanation, with sentiments of profound respect, your most obedient servant von Jung, the Herr Johann Hermann, August 18th, 18 Hermann commenced the perusal of this epistle with a scowl, which, however, was converted into a smile of the most ludicrous self-complacency as he came to the rigmarole about injuriae per applicationem per constructionem et per se. Having finished reading, he begged me, with the blandest of all possible smiles, to be seated, while he made reference to the treatise in question. Turning to the passage specified, he read it with great care to himself, then closed the book and desired me, in my character of confidential acquaintance, to express to the Baron von Jung his exalted sense of his chivalrous behavior, and in that of second, to assure him that the explanation offered was of the fullest, the most honorable, and the most unequivocally satisfactory nature. Somewhat amazed at all this, I made my retreat to the Baron. He seemed to receive Hermann's amicable letter as a matter of course, and after a few words of general conversation, went to an inner room and brought out the everlasting treatise Duelli lex scripta et non aliterque. He handed me the volume and asked me to look over some portion of it. I did so, but to little purpose, not being able to gather the least particle of meaning. He then took the book himself and read me a chapter aloud. To my surprise, what he read proved to be a most horribly absurd account of a duel between two baboons. He now explained the mystery, showing that the volume, as it appeared prima facie, was written upon the plan of the nonsense verses of Du Bartas. That is to say, the language was ingeniously framed so as to present to the ear all the outward signs of intelligibility and even of profundity, while in fact not a shadow of meaning existed. The key to the whole was found in leaving out every second and third word alternately, when there appeared a series of ludicrous quizzes upon a single combat, as practiced in modern times. The Baron afterwards informed me that he had purposely thrown the treatise in Hermann's way 2 or 3 weeks before the adventure, and that he was satisfied, from the general tenor of his conversation, that he had studied it with the deepest attention, and firmly believed it to be a work of unusual merit. Upon this hint he proceeded. Hermann would have died 1,000 deaths rather than acknowledge his inability to understand anything and everything in the universe that had ever been written about the Duello.